So let us start here. So in the electronic world, there are certain parameters which are required to be assured, or any user of an electronic system for any transaction or communication needs to be assured of certain properties. So we look into that, what are those properties? Basically, when two people are talking, that is, let us say A and B, they need to be assured that their message is not being tracked by some third party. So in this scenario, so let us say that when A is communicating with B, there should not be any eavesdropper or hijacker or attacker in the middle who comes and watches what these people are communicating with. So this should not happen. So this property is called as confidentiality or secrecy. So when A and B are talking with each other, they should be assured of confidentiality or secrecy. Now, second thing is about attack on integrity. So now let us say when two people are again talking, let us say, for example, a customer and is communicating with a bank, there should not be any disturbance or any kind of integrity issues with the message. Say, for example, now let us say the customer is saying, please transfer some 1 lakh rupees into Viru's account. Now, there should not be any attacker or any hijacker or any gabber kind of person who should not come into the middle and then change the message to his requirement. So this, if this can be assured, I mean, we can assure that nobody can come in and change your message or content of your message, then basically, then we are providing integrity. So this can also happen in a real life scenario. The third one is basically attack on authenticity. So for example, this is basically about imposter or impersonation. Say for example, let us assume that there are two people, Jay and Viru, who are working in an office. But right now, only Jay is in an office, while Viru may be out of office or something like that. Now, there is a mail which goes to Jay saying that I am Viru, send me all corporate communications with something which is marked as confidential or something like that. So now, Jay should be assured that the message is really coming from Viru and not from any other third party. So now here in this scenario, what is happening here is Gabbar is trying to pretend that he is Viru. Okay, so Gabbar is trying to pretend that he is Viru and actually communicating with Jay. So Jay should have a foolproof mechanism to know that the message is really coming from Viru, or if the message is actually not coming from Viru, that he should have. So that process is called authenticity. Okay, so this is called authenticity. So anything if it happens, it will happen as an attack on authenticity. So now we have understood there are certain properties which need to be assured to the users of an electronic system. So we call those, we actually have 4 properties which we list as PAIN, P-A-I-N. P for privacy or security, A for authenticity, I for integrity, and N for non-repudiation. So privacy or confidentiality or security means when two people are communicating with each other, no third party should come and see that message or view the message, things like that. Authenticity means if I am communicating with you, you should be sure that I am the person whom you are communicating with, and at the same time, I should also be sure that you are the person whom I am speaking with. So that assurance is called as authenticity. That is, A is aware that he is speaking with B, and B is also aware that he is speaking with A. So that property, if it can be assured, then it is called authenticity. Third one is called as integrity. What do we mean by integrity is that when two people are communicating, A and B are communicating, then there should not be any changes which is made in the message. Now let us say the A is sending a message to B, then nobody should be able to come in and change the content of that message. So that is called integrity. The last one is a tricky one, which is called non-repudiation. See, non-repudiation is more to do with the legality and policy side than with technology. Now let us say that I have told you something and you had acted upon it. Now later I come back and say to you that I never told you that. So how can you catch hold of me? That how can you make me responsible for whatever I have done? So that process is called non-repudiation. That is, you have to ensure that I should not be able to deny what I have sent to you or what I have communicated with you. Okay, so that property is called non-repudiation. So any electronic system, if it can assure you the confidentiality or privacy or secrecy and authenticity and integrity and non-repudiation, then we can trust the system. So in today's scenario, on today's technology world, there is no other system except for the public key infrastructure which can assure you all these four properties. Okay, so today in the entire the world context, the public key infrastructure is the only solution which can provide you privacy, authenticity, integrity, and non-repudiation, all to levels of acceptability and to levels of satisfaction. These four properties can be assured by public key infrastructure. So now let us look at the PKI ecosystem. What all it comprises of? Of course, it comprises of technology. Okay, right now we are more into asymmetric key cryptography concepts, which are widely used in technology. Okay, then we have, as I said, that we need to assure all the properties, and there needs to be policies and laws which are governing the system. So this is the part which will take care of it. Then there are global standards which have been established. PKI is not a new technology. It has been there for 25 plus years now. So most of the nations have come together and created, meaning most of the nations have implemented PKI as a technology, and therefore global standards have also evolved in this domain. So any PKI application or any system need to conform to the global standards which have been there. And the last part is, but not the least one, but the most, I would say that the important one is the implementation part. So the implementation is basically how you take the PKI system to the end user. So this is a critical part also, because it has to ensure that any PKI application conforms to the policies and laws, and also conforms to the standards which has been developed, and uses the current technology for delivering the end application. So this can include the software developers also, as well as the end users also, to whom this PKI applications are targeted. So as you can see that PKI consists of, the ecosystem consists of these four major components, which are essential for assuring the trust in a system. So now let us get to one of the most fundamental components or the pieces of public key infrastructure. So that is called digital signatures. So digital signature of a message is a digital fingerprint. Okay, it is a digital fingerprint. When I say fingerprint, you know that it is going to be unique. Am I right? So here we are creating a fingerprint which is almost equivalent in the digital world. So a digital signature of a message is a digital fingerprint generated or created from a secret which is known only to the signer and the content of the message being signed. Okay, so please remember this point. A digital signature is derived from two things. One is basically from the secret which is known only to the signer, and from the content of the message. So here I would like to take a little bit of time and tell you that in a handwritten signature, whenever you sign documents, actually it is very difficult for any third party to imitate your signature. The reason is you got so much used to a particular style of writing, a particular style of putting the curves and strokes and applying the pressure on the pen, etc., that nobody easily can replicate. It has come built. You are built in within your DNA. Okay, so that is the part which helps you to create that secret within you. Okay, but in a handwritten signature, you never look at the content, meaning you don't bother about the content of the message, meaning you read it and then you sign that, but you don't change your signature based on the content of the message. Now let us say that you are a check for you are signing a check for 100 rupees, you don't, meaning you apply the same signature. Tomorrow you have to sign a check for 1 crore rupees. You don't change your signature just because the amount is different or the value is different. Okay, so whatever the content of the message be, your digital signature is, your physical handwritten signature is going to remain the same. But in a digital signature, this one is going to, your digital fingerprint or whatever it is, that is going to vary from content to content. Okay, so the digital signature will vary from content to content because it is tied up with the content of the message as well as to the secret which is known to you. So this is the very important difference between a digital signature and a hand signature. Now, a digital signature can assure you authenticity. Okay, what do you mean by authenticity? Means you can be sure who the person who has signed this particular document or whatever it is. So that is called authenticity. Second thing, you can be assured about integrity. So what do you mean by integrity? So there is nobody has actually changed the content. Suppose when two people, you have digitally signed and sent a message, then you can be sure that nobody has come in between and changed the content of the message after the message has been signed. Okay. So then third one is about non-repudiation. Okay. So here non-repudiation is that today if I have digitally signed something and sent to you, then I should not be able to go back and say that, no, I have not signed this message. So that statement I should not be able to make. So these three properties, authenticity, integrity, and non-repudiation, are assured by digital signature. We will take the questions later. Okay. So now, how do we create a digital signature? So every entity or a person is given a pair of keys. Okay. When you say pair of keys, there are at least two things into a thing. So everybody is given a pair of keys. So one key is called as a public key, which is known to everyone. Second one is called as a private key, which is known only to the owner of this pair of keys. Okay. So what does that mean is I can share this public key to anybody and everybody, but private key I have to keep it secret. Now, the beauty of this pair of key is that they are mathematically related with each other. Okay, in such a way that now let us say that if we are encrypting some message with the public key, then it can be decrypted only with the private key. Okay, let me repeat it. Now let us say that we are going to encrypt a message with a private key, then it can only be decrypted with the public key. It is also vice versa also is true. That is, if I am going to encrypt the message with the public key, then it can only be decrypted with the private key. Okay, so it's something like this. You can see the picture here, where the message is the process of encryption is shown as a lock here, and decryption is shown as an unlock here. So the user, the message, if it is locked with the private key, it can be unlocked with the public key. Okay, so you cannot use the same key for both encryption as well as decryption. Okay, you cannot use the private key for both encryption as well as decryption. At the same time, you cannot also use the public key for both encryption or decryption. You have to always use the related key pair of it. Okay, so that's what we say here. If one of the key in a key pair is used for encryption, then the other key should be used for decryption. Okay, so this is the thing. And most important point is when we talk about the concept of digital signatures, to digitally sign, the user will always use his private key. Okay, and the verifier or any person who wants to verify a given digital document, they will use the signer's public key. Please remember that they will use the signer's public key. Okay, so whenever you are digitally signing a document, you will be using the private key. Whenever the verifier is using, you will be using the signer's public key. So now, whatever that key pair system that we looked at is called as a asymmetric key cryptography or public key cryptography. So now you may be wondering that I told you that the keys in the key pair are related. That is, the private key and public key are related to each other. And I told you that you can share the public key to anybody, but the private key I told you to keep secret with you. But now you may be wondering, what if it is they are mathematically related with each other? Why not a mathematician or whoever is good in this subject of cryptography? Why can't they automatically find my private key by using my public key? Is the question that generally comes into most of us. But the thing is that this system has been designed in such a way that it is not humanly possible. Okay, it is not humanly possible to derive the private key from a given public key. But of course, if you are having access to a supercomputer which can run for let us say 25 years of time with the most modern processors in an uninterrupted way continuously, then probably you can do it. But then you also need to understand what is the cost which is involved in doing such an activity. So basically what we mean to say is this is a computationally infeasible activity. That is, deriving a private key from a given public key is computationally infeasible. And that assures the strength of this particular system. Okay, so now what do we mean by a key pair? Actually, when I'm talking about keys, you have to imagine as this kind of numbers or alpha numerals here, which is looked at it. Okay, so these are all the things. And similarly, public key also is something which is basically the alpha numerals which are there. Okay, so now just to reiterate my point, let us assume that there is a piece of clear text here, and let us use the public key for encryption. You get the encrypted text. And now what you can do is you can use the private key, corresponding private key, not anybody else private key. Actually, I told you that keys come in pairs. So whenever the public key is generated, there is also a private key which comes along with it. So you have to use that key, that private key in the pair for decrypting it. Similarly, if you are going to encrypt the text with your private key, then you have to use the corresponding public key in the key pair and get the clear text. Now, suppose if you don't follow these rules and you try to encrypt the message with the public key and try to decrypt with the same public key or some other public key, it won't work. Similarly, if you try to encrypt with the private key and try to decrypt with the same private key or any other different private key, it will not work. Okay, so you have to always remember that whenever you are encrypting with something, you have to use decrypt with the corresponding other key. Okay, suppose you are using public key, then you have to use the corresponding private key. If you are using private key, then you have to use the corresponding public key for decryption. So now, with that understanding, let us get into the process of digital signing. Now, let us assume that this is the piece of text which has to be digitally signed. The first step is we need to feed this message to a cryptographic hash algorithm, which will produce a digest of this message. We call message digest. Okay. So now let us have a very quick look at what is this cryptographic hash function. Basically, this is a one-way function. So what do we mean by one-way function? You give some input, you will get some output. Okay. But the problem is, if you give the same output back, you won't get the input again. Okay. So the output will be another totally a different one. Okay. So that is the speciality of this one-way function. So what is this function is used for? It is used for generating a fingerprint or digital representation of the fingerprint for a given message. And another important thing is it produces a fixed size output. Whatever the size of input may be, it can be 1 character to 1 billion characters. The output of that message digest algorithm, the hash algorithm, will be of same size. 512 means 512 bytes. Okay, 512 bits. 256 bits means 256 bits. So the output will be always the same size. And the very important and which assures you the property of integrity comes here. Any change to the input message will produce a different digest. Any small change that you produce to the input message will produce a different digest. Okay, there are a number of algorithms. Right now, SHA is the popular algorithm. So let us have a look at this example. So here you are seeing a message on the left-hand side of your screen. So which is passed to the hash algorithm, and it produces a message digest which is something similar to this. Next, we process almost a similar message, but there is one small difference between this one and this one, which is nothing but this small dot. Okay, there is no dot in the left-hand side of your message, but there a dot or a period is there in the right-hand side of the message. Now this we are passing to the cryptographic hash function, which produces a message digest. Now, if you look at the message digest, you can see this message digest, which is on the right-hand side. This is totally different from the one which is on the left-hand side. Okay, this is the importance of the cryptographic hash algorithm. Any small change, any change, not even small change, any change. Now, let us say instead of this full stop or a period, let us say there is one blank space. Then also you will get a totally different digest. So this helps in assuring integrity. Okay, so let us see how. And as I said, this is a one-way algorithm. What does it mean is when you pass the digest back again to the hash algorithm, you won't get the original message. Okay, so this is not possible to get when you pass it again. You will get another same message only. Sorry, another digest. So now these are the different algorithms which are available. This is the message, and this is the SHA-2 algorithm, and this is the algorithm types. Algorithm types. And SHA-2 512 provides you produces a 512-bit output. So now we have found out a way to generate a digest or a message digest for a given input message. Now next, what we need to do is we need to encrypt this one with the private key, the message digest with the private key, which will produce the digital signature. Okay. So finally, the digital signature is appended, and then it is sent along with the message to the receiver. Okay, so this is also an important step. That is the appending of the digital signature to the document and sending it to the third party. So these are the three steps which are involved in the process of digital sign. So now let us have a graphical look of graphical view of whatever has happened. Now the sender, I am composing the message. Okay, a copy of the message is taken and sent to a cryptographic hash algorithm, which produces a message digest. Now this message digest is encrypted with my private key, because I am going to sign this message. So I am going to use my private key for digitally signing this message. So that generates a digital signature. Now this digital signature is appended to the actual message of mine and sent to the receiver. So this is the entire process. Yeah, there are certain questions I think which there is going to be a demo. Please wait for a few more minutes. And the PPTs will be shared. Actually, there is nothing to worry. Is it necessary that same text produced with the same messages? Obviously, yes. As long as you are, the answer also has been given. If there is going to be, the text is going to remain the same, then the digest is also going to remain the same. Okay. As long as the input text is going to remain the same, this also is going to remain the same. Don't worry, the PPTs will be shared in our website, and this entire video will be available in YouTube also. You can have a look at it, and you can download the presentation also. Okay, thank you. So now let us look at the process of digital signature verification. Now let us assume that there is, I am the receiver. I have received a digitally signed message like this, which contains the content as well as the digital signature component into it. Now what I have to do is, I have to first extract the content of this message and then feed it into a digital signature hashing. Sorry, I need to extract the content and pass it to a cryptographic hashing algorithm. This will produce a message digest. Now I have to keep this aside, take this digital signature component out, and I have to decrypt with the public key. The question is, why I am decrypting with the public key? The thing is that the digital signature has been generated using signer's private key. Okay, so now I have to take the signer's public key and decrypt this particular thing so that I get the message digest which has been generated by the signer. Okay, so when I take the signer's public key and decrypt the digital signature, I will get the message digest which the signer has computed. Okay, so now I have taken the message that you have sent to me and I am passing to a cryptographic hash algorithm and I get the message digest. Now, if these two message digests are equivalent, what does that mean? The message has not been tampered with, the integrity of the message has been preserved, and I have received the message as such. Second thing, I am also assured that you have really sent the message because I am using your public key for decrypting. Okay, I am confident that you have used your private key for digitally signing this. And how I am confident? Because I used your public key for decrypting this digital signature component to get the message digest that you computed. Okay, so both integrity as well as the authenticity are assured through this process. Okay, so now let us look at it graphically. Let us assume that this is I am the receiver. I have received the message as well as the digital signature component. Okay, now what I need to do is I pass the message to a hashing algorithm and get the message digest here. Similarly, I take out the digital signature component, okay, and then decrypt it by using the signer's public key. Please remember that I have to use the signer's public key and then I have to get the message digest that you have generated. If both these messages are equivalent, then I am assured that you have digitally signed this document and sent to me. That is number one. Second thing is during the transit, during the message transit, nobody has changed it. The integrity is also preserved. So that is why I'm able to accept it. If there is any discrepancy in the hash values, then we have to simply discard the message and ask the sender to resend it. Okay, because either the message could have been tampered with or the signer's the claimed signer is not the right person. Okay, the claimed person is not the right person. It may be somebody else also. So if the values are matching, yes, you can accept it. If the values are not matching with each other, you have to discard them. So some examples of digital signature. As I told you that digital signatures are basically, they look more or like numbers only. They are content and signer dependent because every person is going to get a pair of keys, private key and public key, and they are content dependent also. As I said that, for example, this message, let us say this one, I am 62 years old, produces a digital signature of this one. But when I am signing another message like I am an engineer, it gets a different digital signature. Now, as you can see, in the last two ones, there is only one small change between the this thing. I am an engineer and I am an engineer, but still there is a totally different signature value which has been generated. The answer lies in the message digest. Okay, the message digest, which is actually will be totally different here. That is the reason, and though the private keys may be same. Now, let us assume that you are trying to digitally sign all these messages. Then you won't get these values and you'll be getting a totally different values. The reason is your private key is different from mine. Your pair of keys are different from mine. So your digital signature values will be totally different. Even though you are signing the same message, the digital signature values will be different because your private keys are different. So digital signatures assures the identity and the authenticity of the signer. It assures you the integrity of the document, and it assures you the non-repudiation, but only to a certain extent. Okay, why? Because now let us say that I have digitally signed and sent you a document, and you have received it, and you have checked it for authenticity, integrity, everything is perfect. And later, at some point of time, I come to you and say that I have never sent this message. My private keys have been stolen and misused by somebody. Now, how will you hold me responsible for whatever I sent to you? Okay, so that is where the gap lies here. Okay, so that cannot be done by technology. It requires some sort of third party to assure uh, you that this is the one of the public. Okay, so that is the reason we introduce the concept of digital certificates. Okay, so before we move out, we need to understand that for digital signing, we have to use the private key of the signer, and for verification, we have to use the public key of the signer. Okay, so that is also important. So a digital signature certificate, DSC, okay, is to firmly establish the owner of the public key. Who is owning the public key? That ownership should be clearly established. Second thing is, it has to certify and provide a strong mechanism for non-repudiation. Okay, non-repudiation technologically it is not sufficient. It provides to have a needs to have a both technical as well as policy background to support it. So what is a DSC? DSC is nothing but an electronic document which is used to prove the ownership of a public key. The certificate includes, say, if you are getting a certificate for your academic activity or grade, it will generally provide you the information saying that this is to certify so and so, that is your name and all those things. And it will also say, it will also contain the signature of the issuer of the certificate. Am I right? Whoever issues the certificate, that issuer's signature also should be there. So since we are talking about digital signature certificate, a digital signature certificate will also contain the digital signature of the issuer of that certificate. Okay, so that is the thing. So let us say that meaning there is a different process. Suppose if I am to claiming myself as Viru, then I need to prove that I am the Viru for a third party, and then he has to get assured that I am Viru, and then only you will be issuing me a digital signature certificate. Now that is where the important thing about the CAs or the certifying authorities come into picture. So these are organizations which issue a digital signature certificate. They are a trusted third party. Okay, so there are a trusted third party. So in India, not everybody can become a CA. They have to. They have a process for enrolling themselves as a CA with the CCA. I'll just tell you. I'll come to you in that a moment of time. And the CAs are the important components or pillars of the public infrastructure. The responsibility of the CA is to verify the credentials of the person requesting for the certificate. Basically, it is the RA's responsibility. RA is nothing but a registration authority, and a registration authority is basically a sub-component under certifying authority. Okay, CA has other duties also. He has to issue a certificate, and he can revoke a certificate and generate and upload a CR. Let me come back one by one. So, for example, let us say that if I am claiming to be Viru, then it is the responsibility of the RA and the CA to verify that really I am the person Viru. Okay, and then only issue me a certificate. Now let us say that I am Balaji, I have claimed myself and I got a digital certificate. Now let us say that a certificate is to be revoked. Say for example, they found out that I am not really Balaji or Viru, I am somebody else. Then they can revoke the certificate. That is one thing. Second scenario is, let us say that I have been using my digital signature certificate for some time now, but suddenly one fine day I feel that my crypto token has been compromised, or my private key, I feel that somebody has taken my crypto token or misused it and things like that. So in that scenario, what I have to do is I have to request the CA, certifying authority, to revoke my certificate. Okay. So now let us assume that the CA is issuing certificate and revoking certificates on whatever the user request. How a third party, whoever is verifying the documents, will know whether a given certificate is revoked or not. For that, we discuss the concept of CRL, Certificate Revocation List. Okay, so this is a public list which contains the list of revoked certificates. Okay, this will contain the list of certificates which has been revoked. So whenever you are being presented with a digitally signed document, you have to ensure that not only you have to ensure the authenticity and integrity concept, but at the same time you should also go and look at the CRL, that is certificate revocation list, and find out whether that certificate has been revoked or not. If it is not been revoked, then only you can consider the digitally signed document. So when I mean certificate, it looks something like this. Okay, so this is a digital signature certificate which has been issued to me by one of the CA way back in 2011. Okay, and you can see the values in the contents of this particular digital signature certificate. It contains a serial number. Every digital signature certificate will have a serial number. What was the algorithm which was used for digital signing? Why this? Meaning this, when I say this signature, this is actually the algorithms which are used for the signer. Okay, the certificate also has been digitally signed. So that signer has used these particular algorithms for digitally signing the certificate. And validity period is also mentioned. Who has issued also is mentioned. Subject is also mentioned. And public key, most important. Please remember that when we talk about a digital signature certificate, it always pertains to the public key. Okay, private key is not coming into picture at all here. We are only talking about the public key. What is the public key of the person of this particular person? So this is what is being always told. Now, coming back, in India, as I said to you, that anybody cannot become a CA. Any person any organization which aims to become a certifying authority should be licensed by the CCA, that is Controller of Certifying Authorities. So Controller of Certifying Authorities is the apex body in India which grants privileges or rights for the certifying authorities to issue digital signature certificates after due verification and things like that. They are more of a regulator. They look at the policies which has been mentioned, which have been rightly followed by the certifying authorities, etc. So in India, we have an hierarchical model of trust. So the root, it starts from the root. Okay, the CCA has set up a National Root Certifying Authority, that is a National Root CA, which is called as RCAI, Root Certifying Authority. And then they license the certifying authorities. Okay, for example, in India we have n number of certifying authorities, including IDRBT, CDAC, ENCODE, eMudra, etc. And we have we as an end user, we are called as subscribers. Okay, as per the legal parlance, we as the users are called as subscribers. We obtain digital signature certificates from a CA, okay, from a CA of our choice. So this is the entire process which actually happens. Okay. So any digital certificate to be legally valid in India, it has to derive the trust from CCA. Okay, you can go to anybody, but ultimately the root should be with the CCA. Then only the certificate can be trusted by any entity or organization within India. So this is the entire thing. So thanks for listening to us. You can always reach us in any of the social media platforms. And before I hand over the thing to Dr. Misbah, if there are any questions, and I can take it.